Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here to continue our series of that one play, and I got a good one for you tonight. Like we ever have not a good one for you. Like it's like the surgery went well. You never hear the surgeon say, "Wow, it was a mess in there." We just had a lot of problems. But anyway, today we're going to talk about Justin Tucker's 2013 game-winning field goal against the Lions, also from 61 yards. Here to talk to us about that is Josh Siegel. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Ken. How are you?
Appreciate you coming on, Josh, and making time out of your busy schedule. NYU college student, I hear, trying to make a career in broadcasting, doing already a lot of campus radio.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Doing a lot of football talk on the radio at WMYU, our college radio station. I love it. Yeah.
All right, very cool. So tell us a little bit why you picked this play as opposed to some other plays in Ravens history. Why was this one important to you?
Sure. So, Justin Tucker has always been one of my favorite Ravens. I've sort of had like three distinct periods for me of Ravens fandom because I started watching the Ravens in 2008, which is a pretty good year to start. But basically, my like time as a Ravens fan has been divided into like those first 5 years that culminated in the Super Bowl. And then later on there's the Lamar Jackson years, and then there's those intermediate 5 years, which were not great, to be honest, a lot of the time. It was a lot of kind of boring average teams. And really with the exception of like that 2014 Steelers wild card game, most of my favorite memories are just Justin Tucker pulling games out of his butt. Um, and this is sort of that game. I mean, I remember watching it. It was a Monday night game. I was in sixth grade watching it with my father. And that was the moment where we really knew we had something special in our kicker. Um, and that sort of set up just the next 4 years, where honestly, a lot of the time, the most exciting thing going on with the Ravens would be a game, where they would win, 19-16 with three Justin Tucker 50-yarders or something like that. And to this day, I wear a Justin Tucker jersey every Sunday during Ravens games. And, to me, this is really the moment where he became, one of my all-time favorite Ravens.
Kind of another player who is similar to another era of fans, Matt Stover, and what he did for the 2000 Ravens certainly is remembered a lot in the same way. But Tucker's on a different planet in terms of his contributions to the Ravens in his career. So take us through the 2000. Where are the Ravens at this point in 2013? And take us up to the play.
Yeah, so they obviously win the Super Bowl in 2012. And then that offseason, the team is gutted a little bit. Ed Reed, Paul Kruger leaving free agency, and Anquan Boldin gets traded to San Francisco, which I would say is still a controversial move among a lot of Ravens fans. Joe Flacco gets his big extension and then has maybe the worst year of his career, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
2013 was a really, really bad year for Flacco. And the Ravens were not a great team. They started off 4-6, and they went on a winning streak in large part fueled by Justin Tucker. I mean, they had the game against the Steelers on Thanksgiving where Mike Tomlin stepped in front of Jacoby Jones, but they wind up winning that game 22-20 on the back of 5 Tucker field goals. They have a win against the Dolphins earlier in the season, 26-23, where Tucker hits 4 field goals down in Miami. There's a game that I was at against the Bengals where AJ Green sends the game to overtime with a Hail Mary, and then Tucker kicks the game winner in overtime. And throughout the season, there was a feeling that this may be our best player.
You mentioned that AJ Green Hail Mary, sending the game in overtime. The Ravens win it anyway in overtime. If you watch that play again, that has some of the great reactions of all time from the Ravens fans in the background, from Jimmy Smith after the play and emoting against Ihedebo, I believe it was, about him knocking the ball up as opposed to down. But the Ravens fans in the background as the ball is caught, as soon as the ball is tipped up, there's one particular fan who knows exactly what it means. And he's already turned his head in disgust as the ball's been turned up. It's a great shot. That fan knew more early than anybody else. But I love seeing fan reaction shots like that. And one of the great things, we're going to talk about the 61 in a moment and some of the reactions from that, but the 66 that Tucker hit 8 years later in that same building. One of the great things about that play, and one of the reasons we're going to be seeing it forever, is unlike Tom Dempsey's 63-yard field goal, or really any of the others, from 64 yards, you can see with crystal clarity everybody behind the uprights, all these Detroit Lions fans and Ravens fans, for that matter, reacting to the kick, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, and beyond the reactions in the stadium, I would say that at this point in time, our society has mastered the art of the YouTube reaction video, where if two friends are watching a game together, one friend films the other. And there are just incredible compilations on YouTube of people reacting to the Tucker 66-yarder, both Ravens and Lions fans.
I got to look for those. I got to look for this because
Yeah.
I have not done that.
They're incredible. But yeah, no, it's funny actually you mentioned the reactions to the AJ Green play, because I was also in the stadium for the Tucker missed extra point against the Saints. And
Right.
like what sort of contrasts those two I remember is that like a Hail Mary is normally a play that like when it's caught, it's like an immediate sudden shocked reaction where it's like, oh my God. And that's what the Tucker missed extra point was like. But as soon as the ball went in the air, everyone yelled no, and everyone had the same reaction. Like that fan you mentioned, I was sitting in the upper deck, but everyone had that exact same reaction to the AJ Green Hail Mary.
Yeah, the ball needs to go down, not up. Then you're obviously,
Yeah.
you just got to be careful about that. But okay, so we're back in 2013 again. Let's go back to quote unquote present day here, the past day, and talk a little bit about the game itself and how the Ravens got to this point.
Yeah, so this was a big game for the Ravens. As I mentioned earlier, they had started off 4-6. They had won their previous 3 games. The week before was the famous snow game against the Vikings with 5 touchdowns in the final minute. Yeah, a weird thing about that season is that as unfun as it was, it has like some of the most ridiculous Ravens wins ever. But so going into this game, the Ravens are 7-6, and basically needing to either win out or win 2 of 3 to make the playoffs. But considering their last 2 games were against New England and Cincinnati, this was a really big one against a pretty decent Detroit team that I believe was also 7-6 coming in. And the game unfolds really weirdly. The Ravens are outplaying the Lions for most of the game, but similar to some other Ravens teams that are unable to punch the ball in the end zone. And essentially the entire time they are relying on pass interference calls setting up Justin Tucker field goals. It's really remarkable when you watch back the highlights of the full game. There are multiple of the field goals that are just set up by either a turnover or an interference call, and then the offense stalls and Tucker takes a field goal. And then the Lions score a touchdown to go up 16-15. The Ravens have a drive that basically has one long completion to Jacoby Jones.
Yeah, so a couple of things about that. First of all, the Lions missed a critical 2-point conversion to Calvin Johnson after it. That would have put them up 3. And then on that next drive, Flacco, I think he might have been slightly hurt at that time, but he's having a lot of trouble getting the ball off. The ball was really sailing on him. And the one play where he got it down was I think it was a 3rd and long to Jacoby Jones, which he hit for about 15 yards. Yeah. It was 3rd and 15 for 27 yards. There you go.
And you watch the play, it's a great catch by Jacoby Jones. Because like you said, the throw sailed on him. And Jacoby Jones had to go up and get it, but then also got down and got a pretty significant amount of yak afterwards.
So another big play where Jacoby Jones bails out that 2013 team. He definitely had just in that brief streak, he had the run back where Tomlin interfered with him that should have been a touchdown, and frankly should have been ruled a touchdown. Would have been the correct call to do on that. He had the run back against Minnesota in the final minute, which, by the way, nobody has taken a play from that Minnesota game. Get on board, guys. Find a play from that Minnesota game you want to talk about. There's 5.
It might be hard to pick one because there are so many.
Yeah. And then he had this one. So quite a season for Jacoby.
But yeah, so then they have that one big Jacoby Jones play, and then a weird play calling sequence where they have 3rd and 10 and run a draw to Ray Rice that gets 3 yards. And then they keep the offense out on the field, but then they call a timeout and bring out Tucker, which was the right move. I remember watching at the time, I was not fully conditioned yet to like, oh, you obviously kicked the 61-yarder with Justin Tucker. So I was like, why are they running it? It's just going to make 4th down harder for the offense. But sure enough, Harbaugh calls the timeout. Tucker comes out and sneaks the kick right in the bottom right corner. The Ravens go up 18-16.
It was one of those field goals, very unusual for Tucker, who splits the uprights like no one else's business. Very rarely has he had kicks that have just barely made it. Well, he's had some just barely made it, including both kicks at Detroit. But he's had relatively few that have been just snuck inside an upright. And a lot of other kickers seem to live off those kicks. They also
Yeah,
miss a lot more kicks too.
yeah,
But we
yeah.
did.
Well, that's always been the incredible thing with Tucker. And actually, during the Ravens Bengals game this year, when he hit the game winner, Chris Collinsworth did a really good job of mentioning this on the broadcast. Is that naturally when a kicker sweeps their leg, the ball will usually fade a little bit because they're kicking it in one direction or another. Tucker's kicks go straight.
Mhm.
It's why it's actually sometimes rare that, like in that Bengals game on a 43-yarder, he wants the ball down the middle because he's just kicking it straight rather than giving
Mhm.
himself more leeway in one direction or another. And when you watch that kick against the Lions, the ball starts to fade and then stops. Like, I don't know the physics of it. I've never really
Mhm.
seen a kick like that. That it started veering right and then stopped and kept straight like the last, third of the way or so, just to sneak inside the right upright.
Yeah, it's certainly a thing of beauty. Talk about some of the reactions afterward in terms of what you see on the sideline, because the defining memory for me, I think, is Calvin Johnson on the
Yeah,
sideline
that's the
and him
one.
being upset.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things I remember with this. Calvin Johnson had a weirdly bad game because he had two huge drops in the first half of that game. Um, and then he dropped the 2-point conversion. And then, yeah, that kick goes in and he looks absolutely stunned. He looks like someone, punched him in the gut. It, you know, it's funny thinking back to 2013 because I think the reactions today, or not today, sorry, a year ago when he hit the second kick against the Lions, it was more like, oh my God, this guy is incredible. Not like to compare him to it, but it's like there's the famous picture when Michael Jordan hits the shot against the Jazz when there's all the fans in the background, like knowing the shot's going to go in. I felt like the second kick was sort of like that, where at that point everyone knew who Tucker was, and it was like, oh my God, this guy, there's no beating him. And then the first one is like, it's like there's a little bit of like, who the heck is this guy? What did he just do to us?
Mhm.
And that's what's so fun about it. It's absolutely stunned. It's stunned silence.
Yeah, so Tucker had already made the Mile High Miracle kick, which was actually one that he kind of snuck inside the upright,
Yeah,
by the way, and that one. And then, so that he made the first big kick of his career. He'd been 30 of 33 during his first regular season. So it's not like he didn't have already a pretty wonderful resume by week 15 of 2013. But I went out on the Steelers boards, which is something I occasionally do certainly after a play like the Tomlin play comes up. I want to see their reaction to it. I want to understand what their perspective is on that play. So it might make some good fodder to talk about on the show. But anyway, in this case, the going out on the Steelers site to watch what they said about Tucker's kick is, oh my God, this kicker just saved the Ravens season. It's like they don't even know him by name yet.
yeah,
But it's interesting.
yeah.
It's definitely a defining moment. And how happy will the Lions be for the 2029 matchup against the Ravens, where Justin Tucker will probably still
Yeah,
be the kicker?
yeah, yeah. It's going to be a big storyline. Um, But yeah, I mean, I think what was so incredible about that 2013 season is, I remember you had Aaron Schatz on to talk about Justin Tucker on an episode earlier. And something that he talked about was like how inconsistent kicking is and how remarkably consistent Tucker's been. I think that's the thing that made 2013 so incredible is that Ravens fans had already been burned, right, by Billy Cundiff having a really good year and then obviously coming back the next year and struggling from deep and then missing kick against the Patriots. And Tucker has this incredible 2012 season, and he backs it up with an even better 2013. And it's like, oh my God, what do we have here? Um, and it was really incredible because I remember like I've been telling my friends for the last few weeks, like, this guy's the best kicker in football, trust me. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh, who's the second year guy? Whatever, Goskowski. And then he hits that kick, and it's like, there's no one like him.
Mhm. Yeah, one of my college friends who is the voice of the Bengals now, Dan Horde. These guys, boy, if you want to be jealous of somebody's life, Dan Horde has already been named on a Simpsons episode.
Wow.
Yeah, he's the voice of the Bengals
Yeah.
now. Just it's and still, you're going into broadcasting. He's a cautionary tale. He traveled to Pawtucket to call their games for might have been a couple of years, because that's kind of the AAA of being a broadcaster, is doing the Paw
Yeah.
Sox games. And it's really he did a lot. He didn't just fall in his lap or anything. He's very talented. But the interesting thing that he did about Tucker was to call him. And I think it was in the 2014 or now maybe the 2016 game. You know, he just identified him as he's the greatest kicker of all time. And that was a game, I think he had 350-yarders.
Yeah, against Cincy.
Yeah.
Yeah, won
So
me my fantasy game that week. Tucker did.
well, that's
Yeah.
important there. We do want to know where that stain on the
Yeah.
carpet came from. So
Yeah.
that's what I tell people doing this show. Josh,
Yeah.
terrific stuff. I know the Ravens didn't quite have the game won at that point. They had to depend on a Matt Elam
Yeah.
pick to
Matt
actually steal it
Elam.
up.
Yeah. Game-winning pick.
But we're
Greatest
not.
moment in Baltimore.
Yeah, we don't. It was, it was really the peak of Matt Elam's career, but we don't really have time to discuss that. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of the show. Great episode. Really appreciate your discussion, your preparation at a very high level, and obviously your understanding of this is good. Wish you the best in your broadcast career. But tell me, where can folks find your stuff online?
For sure. So all my episodes with WNYU are archived on WNYU.org. The shows are 7 p.m. on Monday and Tuesday, so you can listen to them live or go through our archives. It's all online. I also write for ebonybird.com, the Ravens fan-sided website, so you can find that stuff there. You can find me on Twitter at JZSiegel15.
All right, outstanding. Thanks for coming on today. Other folks out there, if you want to do an episode like Josh, or even not like Josh, because Josh did a great job here today, I'd love to have you on. Give me the play you want. Maybe something from that 2013 Vikings game would be pretty cool at this point. And I will get right back to you. DMs are always open on Twitter. Josh, thanks again for coming on.
For sure. Thanks so much for having me.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.